Hello, everyone. Welcome to the interoperability panel of the Multi-Chain Infrastructure Summit. My name is Raghav, and I'm part of the investment team at Longhash. And today, I'm excited to host some of the amazing thought leaders to talk about interoperability in Web3. So the future of Web3 is multi-chain, as a single layer one is not enough to cater to all the evolving requirements of applications being developed on blockchains. And we have seen emergence of multitude of layer ones and ecosystems, which has allowed developers to experiment a lot, but at the same time, it has come at the cost of fragmented liquidity and suboptimal experience. And hence, we are witnessing the emergence of a lot of bridging solutions, general message passing solutions. So today, we are going to talk about the requirements, designs of interoperability solutions, the interesting use cases which are being enabled, and what does a multi-chain future look like. So I would like to begin today's discussion by going around the table and asking our panelists to introduce themselves and share some details regarding the solutions they are closest to or they have been working on. So let's start with Zaki.
I'm Zaki, longtime Cosmos contributor, worked on IBC for many years, also co-founder of a protocol called Sommelier Finance that uses a multi-chain architecture to build actively managed DeFi sellers and contribute to a lot of interoperability protocols.
Great. Sota?
Hello everyone, my name is Sota Watanabe. I'm a long-time Polkadot contributor, and we are making Asta Network. Asta Network is the smart contract hub on Polkadot for a multi-chain era. And the Polkadot does not support smart contract by design, so we are providing EVM plus WebAssembly smart contract hub right now. Yeah, very excited to be here.
Great. Sergey?
Hey guys, yeah, great to be here. I'm Sergey. I'm a co-founder of Axelar. We're working on the secure cross-chain communication network.
All right. So I think without using a complex consensus algorithm, we can all agree that we have an amazing group of people on our panel today. So yeah, let's deep right into it. So I would like to begin the conversation with my first question to Zaki. So when the first Cosmos white paper was published, it talked in great detail about inter-blockchain communication, or IBC, on which you have worked for quite a lot of time. So I was hoping to understand if you could talk us through what was the rationale of implementing a like-line verification model, and why is it so difficult to use IBC right out of the box for chains like Ethereum?
Yeah. Okay. So the biggest thing that Cosmos believes in is the app chain model, i.e., that as blockchain applications mature, the best blockchain applications will frequently choose to build an entire purpose-built blockchain. So you can think of things like DYDX v4, Osmosis, lots of DeFi applications in general, but like also NFT trading apps like Stargaze as examples of application-specific blockchains. But if you want to build an application-specific blockchain and you have to onboard to exchanges, create your own bring stable coins over, all of this stuff, and it's all really hard, no one will build application-specific blockchains. And so what we realized was needed was a system of interoperating blockchains. So the thing about Cosmos is the entire system, from the way in which the consensus algorithm works, Tendermint works, to the to like how we build applications in Cosmos SDK, to the way it was like designed from the ground up to make IBC possible. Now, most other blockchains do not prioritize interoperability as like a core value in the design of their stack. Ethereum has prioritized, liveness and, being able to handle like large number of validators going offline in a nuclear war, or Avalanche has prioritized potentially having millions of validators over this interoperability property. And so they've all had to do various sorts of retrofits to support this. Now, so that's basically the reason. Is Cosmos, everything was designed for interoperability from day one, in order that we made it very easy for one blockchain to essentially understand what was going on in another blockchain built with the Cosmos tech stack. And this was not, but that has created the opportunity for something like Axelar and various other protocols. But we are, the other thing is that when you have the light client based approach, you don't need to have like a sort of permissioned biz dev approach to connectivity. When someone starts up a new Cosmos chain, they can easily connect to Osmosis, connect to Agoric, get stablecoins, connect to bridges, connect to Axelar. All of this process is permissionless, and that's really what light client-based interoperability gets you, is a permissionless interoperability.
Got it. So basically, you're saying the entire ecosystem was designed with the ethos of interoperability because you're focusing on like multiple app chains for they're like application specific chains for each and every protocol, and hence you need a solution right out of the box which can support interoperability. Yeah, great. So Sergey, coming to you, Zaki talked about IBC, and XLR itself is built on the Cosmos SDK, but XLR allows supporting interoperability between different EVM chains, right? So what's the approach taken by XLR? I'm sure that you can talk about in detail, but like client verification is not being used. XLR has its own set of validators. So could you walk us through like why you decided to build on Cosmos SDK, but then eventually you're also able to connect all the EVM chains?
Yeah. So I think we started with a different goal in mind, right? Than kind of Cosmos was built. I think we started with a goal that there's going to be different blockchains. There is going to be different consensus mechanisms, right? They're all going to operate very, very differently. And the question is, how do you connect them together, with a minimal effort, right? And so kind of the basics of connectivity, right? And I think some of the design principles that we had are actually, from the core like networking literature, right? So if you look at like Cerf and Kahn, right, back in the development of the internet, they defined the properties of interoperability, right? And one of the properties to scale for the protocols was things like plug and play connectivity, right? So an ability to be able to connect to, a network without having the network change its core requirements in some sense, right? So how do you do that? And so that's kind of the premise with which we built Axelar. I always say that kind of how A connects to B, from my view, is actually, I'm pretty agnostic to it, right? There's, we do support like IBC at the core. If there are light clients, available for other chains, great, you can plug them in. If there's like a zero knowledge proof that's available from another chain, you can plug that into the Axelar. But interoperability, it's not just about what does the pairwise protocol connecting A and B looks like. It's really how do you build, kind of a many-to-many mesh network, right, that can efficiently scale and support more protocols. And so that has been, kind of the core requirement that we've designed. And how do we connect all those different blockchains? It's actually a combination of two things. On different chains that we bridge, there is actually a version of an Axelar-like client. You can think of it that way, right? So meaning that the chains have a kind of gateway router, what we call, that is aware of the Axelar, consensus and validator set, right? And then it authorizes messages if and only if the Axelar validators have authorized it. And then on the way kind of back, when the the light clients are not available, then there is what we call like as an external voting protocol that happens, where Axelar validators vote on the events without having to parse the light clients, and then they reach a consensus of what needs to happen with those events, and then they route them to the corresponding destination, right? So yeah, that's the kind of the high level architecture. It's been designed to be as plug and play and possible, and be able to kind of connect very heterogeneous blockchains.
Right. So the overall design architecture is that you do not want to care about the source and the destinations architecture, but you still want to enable them to be able to talk to each other. And that's where XLR is coming in, right? And then for that, you could maybe have light clients, you could use IBC for within Cosmos, you could use your own set of validators, but the objective is interoperability.
That's right.
Great. Thanks for that perspective. And coming to Soda, XCMP also enables different heterogeneous systems to connect to each other. It allows proof of work like Bitcoin to talk to maybe proof of stake like Ethereum. And A-Star right now is working on connecting Polkadot to Cosmos to Ethereum. So could you also walk us through a little bit about the design principles as to what is happening? Like, how do you enable different heterogeneous systems to talk to each other?
Got it. So first of all, on behalf of the Polkadot, I would like to explain the basic architecture of the Polkadot. So Polkadot consists of the relay chain and the parachain. So relay chain is the heart of the Polkadot, and that does not support smart contract. And the parachain has own logic. It's like DeFi chain, maybe NFT chain, maybe smart contract chain, and so on. The essence is the relay chain does not support smart contract. The role of the relay chain is just connecting the parachain and providing the security to the parachain. And once parachain is connected to the relay chain, we can bring validator from relay chain to parachain. So we are making parachain called the Asta network. And since Polkadot relay chain does not support smart contract, we are making smart contract hub that support WebAssembly smart contract as well as EVM smart contract. And once we connect our blockchain to Polkadot, we can bring validator from relay chain to parachain. The biggest concern when you make own blockchain from scratch is the security. So if we connect our blockchain to Polkadot, we can get Polkadot security, I think $7 billion or something from relay chain to parachain. And another thing is the interoperability. So the protocol to connect the parachain and parachain is called XMP, cross-chain messaging passing. And XCM is the format. And XMP is the protocol, the communication protocol between parachain and parachain. So we have already connected our blockchain to Polkadot relay chain. Then we can use XCMP with other parachains like Akara or Moonbeam and Parallel Finance and so on. So this is very trustless. But when it comes to between Asta Network and Cosmos, Asta Network to Ethereum, we have to use another protocol. This is just like an EVM bridge or maybe the light client implementation and so on. So yeah, within the Polkadot ecosystem, it's very trustless. But outside of the Polkadot ecosystem, it's not trustless yet. So we have to use trust to minimize the bridge. I think this is the current issue, and it is the current landscape of the Polkadot ecosystem right now.
Got it. Great. So I think we covered, both the extremes of two approaches. One is the light client approach, which is more or less trustless, which is happening for communication within the Cosmos ecosystem, which is also being used within the Polkadot ecosystem, this trustless. And then you have some trust assumptions coming with their own set of validators, right? So Sergey, could you elaborate a little bit more on, what are the additional trust assumptions that come in due to the own validator set, and what are the key challenges that you need to tackle in order to make the overall system as trustless as possible, or move towards more trustlessness?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think I really don't like the word trustless when it comes to interoperability, right? Because the reality is that any protocol you look at has a set of trust assumptions, all right? The trust assumptions is a combination of, your implementation, your cryptographic assumptions, your economic assumptions, and so on and so forth, right? So even if you, directly connect something through the light clients, often that means that you trust in, implementation of those light clients, right? Like, yes, maybe you don't have to, you are only kind of, I guess, removing, potentially other third-party code, right, and verifying everything within your own code base, but you're trusting that, that code base is correctly implemented, right? And light clients usually have a pretty large and complex code base, right, that you would have to implement. So yeah, I actually think of thinking about security, it's better to think about, these layers of security, right? And something like, I don't know, what is the trusted computing base of your solution, right, is probably a better metric. And like, you can measure the trusted computing base in different factors. So for instance, one, pretty old school way of doing it is like, how many, lines of code besides your trust assumptions do you have, right? So, and how complicated those kind of lines of codes are, right? And so with Axelar, you are relying on external validator to vote on events from certain chains that don't have light clients, right? The other way back, it's still like light client based from the Axelar, but chains that don't have it, you are relying on the voting logic. And frankly, in most cases, like, I think it would be great to have a light client, but people have to realize that like light client would come with a pretty complicated and expensive code base that somebody's going to have to trust and audit. And most of the bugs in the space have been not because of this additional assumptions, but because of smart contract errors. So so you're back to that solution. So from that perspective, I think have kind of trusted computing base that I think has a good balance, right, between introducing assumptions, but also has a simplicity at its core. So I think that's one thing. But at the same time, so that's one thing. I think the second thing, which I think is actually quite important to realize, I think as more connectivity happens in the ecosystem, you can't hope to connect everything in a pairwise way, right? Like, you're going to end up with a quadratic number of connections across all the ecosystems. So assuming the blockchains continue to scale, app chains roll up, layer ones, whatever you want to call it, you're going to have connectivity through other intermediaries, okay, one way or another, because you can't manage quadratic number of connections in the space. Nobody can manage that amount of infrastructure. And so when you are then in the model of having to rely some type of intermediary, network or protocol, you might as well rely and make sure it's been built, to the core to deal with interoperability, right? And I think, from that perspective, kind of having a, intermediate network that facilitates your requests, you actually end up with better security properties than, arbitrary passing messages through, a small network that may not have a lot of stake and like could be compromised or doesn't have, any type of kind of a proper maintenance behind it in terms of faults or upgrades and things like that.
Got it. So in your opinion, when we're talking about security, we should not just talk about additional trust assumptions, but we should also talk about the assumptions regarding the smart contract, like the possibility of bug in a smart contract, or the kind of app chains that we are connecting, or what's the possibility of a bug in a source or the destination. Great. So I think I would like to ask Saki to share some of his views, given that we, in sort of the communication, we talk about IBC a lot being trustless, right? But then Sergey here is arguing that you do have the possibility of malicious or incorrect like client implementation. So what's your thought in terms of security that IBC brings to the table, and how does it affect the overall system? Sorry.
The main piece here is there are advantages to standardized bridge protocols. I think that's the biggest component here. It's not like IBC will always be flawless. There will, but one advantage of IBC is that there are a lot of different teams that do look at it and do investigate it and do, and that benefits a very large number of chains that all use the same code base and related protocols, right?
Right.
If you look at a lot of the bridging protocols that are out there, they are basically running one bespoke protocol that's used by one team. And so I think that's probably like what I think of as like one of the biggest, parts of risk that like makes me nervous is about this ecosystem. And I think I think that there is too much emphasis placed on like the trustless absolute frontier of blockchains and not enough emphasis placed on I think that IBC basically has two interesting properties. One, it's a protocol that's standardized, that there are lots of different people contributing, implementing, building around it. And that there is, and that the second piece is that there is, that the light client-based approach was mostly interesting because it made it so easy for new chains that are joining the community to connect without having to ask anyone else. These are the core things that I find interesting about IBC. But without Axelar, the Cosmos network would not be connected to so many of the places. It's gotten to the point where you use Axelar with the rest of the Cosmos network on a super regular basis. Axelar actually composes really well with the Cosmos network. The user experience of using Satellite to go from Polkadot to Osmosis, or go from Ethereum to Osmosis, or go from Ethereum to Agoric makes the whole thing feel like one seamless user experience. Which I think is just one of the most amazing things about where we are in interoperability, that it actually does feel like a unified experience.
Got it.
And one thing just to add to that, right? I think what Zach has said, I think the permissionlessness of being able to instantiate IBC is, I think, actually to me, that's the strongest property, right? And I think that's what resulted in this ecosystem. I think we're thinking pretty hard. How do you do that, right? When you don't have clients, right? Kind of at Axelar, kind of thinking through different models, how to instantiate it. I think we have interesting, kind of approaches, but to me, that's what allowed it, to kind of scale, right? And kind of be at the level that it is, you can set up a connection, right? And you can, figure out your own relays. You don't have dependence on anybody. And I think that's, that's the power of these light client verification models.
I've used Axelar a lot lately to mint IST from Agoric, and it's honestly amazing.
Great. Sergey talking a lot about IBC, Zaki talking a lot about Axelar. Yeah, I think everyone's moving towards a lot of synergies in the space. Yeah, happy to see that. Yeah, I think one interesting point which Sergey brought up was that, as more and more chains come up, it's not going to be possible to have one-on-one connection. So my next question to you is how do you see, once you have the overall infrastructure in place, which is good enough to connect multiple chains, how do you see it growing? How do you see so many connections being handled? How is A-Star tackling that challenge of connecting so many chains? Is it like a hub and spoke model where A-Star is sitting at the center connecting everyone? Or are you also enabling direct connections from one chain to another? How do you tackle that problem?
Yeah, I think the problem right now is there are so many standards like XMP, IBC, Axelar, and so on. And each person has different implementation. So it is extremely hard for blockchain developer to standardize the all implementation. But I think as a smart contract platform, we have a lot of the toolings, a lot of the virtual machines, and so on. So I think we can have multiple standards on a single network, single blockchain. So we could have Axelar, we could have XMP, we could have IBC in the future. And the problem right now is when it comes to multi-chain, I think dApps developer is just satisfied with connecting, deploying dApps on multiple network. So when it comes to multi-chain, we are connecting blockchain in the application layer. Let's say Uniswap. Uniswap is deployed on Polygon, Ethereum, when it comes to usability, you have to connect your network MetaMask to Ethereum, Polygon, and so on. I even do not know how many tokens I manage on Polygon. I'm managing on Ethereum, and so on. In the future, I think that when it comes to a multi-chain era, protocol will be connected in a protocol layer, not in an application layer. So I think usability will be significantly improved because within a click, I can use Ethereum asset on Astar, Cosmos asset on Astar, or maybe other parachains asset on Astar. So this is what I would like to do. But right now, even in a Polkadot ecosystem, we are satisfied with opening the channel between a parachain. So I can transfer, Akara's token from Akara parachain to Astar, but there are at least 3 steps. I have to install MetaMask. I have to transfer Akara token to Astar by using our official website and use it on our DeFi. So actually, we have a 3-step, but we can make it single or 2-step. Then I think usability will be significantly improved. So I think blockchain should be connected in a protocol layer, and this is the hot topic in 2023.
Okay, got it. Great. So I think we did cover a lot about the overall design architecture, the trade-offs taking place, and talked a lot about security. I'm hoping to move the conversation a little bit more towards the side of the use cases that come. And before we talk about use cases, maybe try and get some thoughts around what is a multi-chain application versus a cross-chain applications, and why do we need general message passing solutions instead of just transferring tokens across chains? So maybe let's start with Sergey, given that XLR has already implemented GMP for multiple EVM chains. So why do you think that GMP is required? Why can't users just rely on a bridge?
Yeah, I mean, the analogy that I give is that with just token transfers, right, in many use cases, we have turned users into human routers, right? So if you want to interact with 10 different chains, you go and move your tokens, use the application, move your token somewhere else, and use an application there. And I think it's fine. I think the use case of moving value around is always going to be there, and it's an important use case. But then the question is, how do you really build chain agnostic experiences for the users, right, that regular users can resonate with? And that means really enabling them to interact with any asset with any application from their wallet with one click, right? So meaning that I have some tokens, on Osmosis or on Cosmos, anywhere in the chain, right? I see another application within the Cosmos or Ethereum or anything else. I go to my Kepler wallet, I click on it, and the request, should go to the application, be executed. And if it returns me some tokens, yes. If it just a cross-chain function call and I need to look up some value, great. That's fine, right? So an ability to move beyond having humans doing the token routing comes with the ability to program a lot of these sequence instructions in a program or a message, okay? And that message can be then shipped across different blockchains to be executed to execute all these user intents, right? So if my intent is to take my tokens, go to some DEX on Ethereum or on Cosmos, swap them for another token, and then take the result and move it back to my chain, right, where I have my wallet, that intent should be programmed and executed as one transaction, right? And so often to execute it as one transaction, you have to then augment token transfers with general message passing or just pass messages, right? And so I think that's the important paradigm that we see from the UX perspective. And I think the second important property that you have with general message passing is that instead of moving value around, you can synchronize applications without fragmenting the value, right? So meaning that, if you have a token on one chain and you want to take a loan against it in a token on a different chain, you don't necessarily have to move tokens around, right? You can lock your token in one contract on one chain, send a call or a message to another contract on another chain that says, I've been authorized to take the loan. This is the parameters of my loan. Give me this loan in a stable coin or another chain, right? So you don't have to fragment liquidity. You can actually kind of what I call is move the program to where the assets are and then execute some action on top of it. And so that in itself can result in very interesting security properties. I think it could also result in very interesting, liquidity unification properties, which I think we're starting to see it right away. So yeah, I think those are kind of the main things that come to mind.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're basically saying that there's a lot of complexity involved with users when transferring tokens. So to abstract all that complexity away from the user, to enable them a chain agnostic experience, you need general message passing, because you don't want users to be transferring tokens all the time for anything that they want to do. Great.
One thing I would like to add from the platform side is we are making a smart contract layer 1 blockchain, and we do have a multiple EVM bridge. And one thing I would like to mention is when it comes to EVM bridge, let's say Axera or maybe other sellers, Stellar Network or maybe Layer Zero, if this is like lock and mint bridge, from the platform side, we do have a multiple USDT smart contract, multiple USDC smart contract, and so on. So I think from our view, we have to improve the usability. So let's say USDT bridged by Axera needed to be compatible with the USDT bridged by Layer Zero. And this needed to be swapped on the top of Asta network with low slippage. So it's not only about bridge protocol, it's also about DeFi, stablecoin swap, and so on. So we do needed to improve the user experience.
Got it. So I think all of us can agree that enabling a better user experience is one of the focus areas right now, and you're ready to do whatever it takes to do so. Yes, Zaki, please go ahead.
Yeah. What I would just say is I think there are user experiences that can be constructed out of multi-chain applications that cannot be that are not merely like scaling of existing applications. I think Sommelier is a great example. We use a Cosmos chain to drive consensus, incentive alignment, a bunch of other things, governance, etc., for a multi-chain application. But then the execution is happening on Ethereum chains. And if there was a Cosmos to Ethereum general passing solution, we wouldn't need our own bridge. The fact that we have our own bridge is just an artifact of where we are in the maturity of generalized bridging solutions. But because of this, we're able to use the DeFi composability of Ethereum, use the sophisticated governance and stuff like that you can build on top of Cosmos, use them together to achieve a unique user experience.
Got it. So I think user experience coming as a focus area from all three of our panelists. Great to see a lot of synergies again. Yeah. So one question that I have for Zaki is, we talked about the scaling of multiple app chains and then maybe a possibility of hub and spoke model where Cosmos Hub is sitting at the center and all the app chains are connected to the hub, which essentially allows them to connect to all the other app chains. But then there's also the concept of a path dependent token, right? That the tokens are path dependent. So how do you think that affects the composability and the user experience, that if a token is coming from path ABC rather than ADC, how does that affect the user experience? And how do you think that will scale when there are 500 or 1,000 app chains in future?
So I think there's a variety of different ways of dealing with, couple of various components of this. One is, I think that the user experiences that Sergey was talking about, where you for instance, you collateralize a loan with a token on one chain and you mint the loan on another chain. These things do not, to the same extent, suffer the path dependence problem. But when you are dealing with bridged assets, you have this path dependence problem.
Right.
I think within the IBC ecosystem, it's actually possible, and it's likely coming sometime in the next year, that we can have automatic path shortening. So, if you buy some IST on Osmosis and you move it to Stargaze, Osmosis and Stargaze can automatically figure out that both of you have a connection to the Agoric chain and automatically shorten the path so that you get a fungible asset on the other side. The protocol will most likely support that in the future. So I do think that these path dependence problems are in some protocol specific cases manageable. And it's to an extent, it's just work that needs to go into every single IBC, every single multi-chain protocol to manage this.
Got it. Great. So I think moving more towards the use cases that interoperability of general message passing is enabling. Sergey talked about locking contracts on one chain, taking loan on another. Zaki talked about how Similar is doing that consensus and security coming from one chain, but the execution happening on Ethereum. So do you have any thoughts? Could you share some interesting use cases that you're seeing with the emergence of general message passing or with the emergence of a multi-chain feature? What are the most interesting use cases that you're seeing so far?
For me, I'm in a Polkadot ecosystem, so right now XCMP is not fully ready yet. I hope it will be ready next Q1. So, but the HRMP, which is horizontal messaging passing, is ready. So we have already opened our channel with other parachains, almost all of them. So one great use case we are making is we have a staking function, so people can stake Asta token on the Asta network. dApps, and they can earn staking rewards. And there is another automation parachain. So people have to claim manually right now. Maybe in a day, or one time in a month or one time in a year, but people can automatically claim by using other parachains function. So we are borrowing another parachains function to Astar, and we are customizing our blockchain itself. So to do so, I think we are improving the user experience regarding the staking. And this is just one use case. So, and when it comes to DeFi, Akara issued a stablecoin. So we can bring stablecoin to Astar and collateralized USD pegged stablecoin on our DeFi protocol. So we do not need to make stablecoin from scratch because this is not our specialty. Yeah, this kind of the use case will be emerging in 2023, but it's not fully ready yet.
Got it. Interesting to see. Absolutely. Zaki, coming back again to you, interesting to see sort of talking about staking as one of the use cases. Now we're also seeing a lot of liquid staking solutions emerging in the Cosmos ecosystem, but I know there were some concerns with the liquid staking with the passing, rejection of the proposal 82. So do you have any thoughts on how liquid staking future will look like in the Cosmos ecosystem, and how will that be enabled? And maybe talk a little bit about the concerns that community had regarding those and how being those addressed.
I mean, I think there's a couple of things. I think one is I view liquid staking as like one of the biggest problems that we face with proof of stake is that proof of stake enables a kind of vertical integration in our industry that is not really that never really happened with proof of work, which is exchanges becoming block producers, right? And this represents kind of the biggest. And if you look at any of the large cap networks, their proof of stake networks, block production is dominated by exchanges. And I think what the biggest threat to proof of stake is this. And so I think that there is a sort of misunderstanding or a kind of mob mentality that has formed around liquid staking, when it is, without a doubt, probably the most compelling thing that we've been able to come up with as an industry as an alternative to exchange block producers, to create incentives for non-exchange block producers. So that's to me, why I think it is going to be very important if proof of stake networks are to remain decentralized, that you see an adoption of liquid staking within. Now, where you have a staking token that also has governance authorities, like you do with Atoms, there are additional challenges that need to be figured out. And Occlusion has put Occlusion, which is one of the primary entities I work with, has put a year of R&D into the liquid staking changes to the Cosmos SDK staking module, exploring ways of mitigating risks with adopting liquid staking in order to find a risk minimized way. But I think trying to fight the reality of liquid staking as much as people, I don't know, I just think Prop 82 revealed what I think is one of the more just troubling realities in general with blockchains right now, where protocols and communities in general are like, oh, we really like these inflationary staking rewards. We really like airdrops. We think everything is going great. But I think when you look over the horizon, you see a lot of challenges to the proof of stake economy. I think it's a huge milestone, with the merge happening, that we went from being majority of assets secured with proof of work to proof of stake. Hopefully that's still true with current price changes. Don't know. But I still think that there are still big economic questions, and that sort of engaging with the evolution of staking and the adoption of liquid staking is the best way to continue to decentralize staking rather than just sort of a knee-jerk dislike of it.
Got it. So still very optimistic on the future of liquid staking. Right. Yeah, great to hear your thoughts on that. I think, so what's your approach going forward? Do you think that there needs to be a lot of, education or community awareness around this? Or apart from dealing with the challenges of liquid staking, which I am sure that quite a lot of people and thought leaders in Cosmos ecosystem are doing, given that we already saw the Atom 2.0 white paper being written by such an eclectic, group of developers and thought leaders, how do you think we move ahead? Do you think that community engagement and community education and awareness is very much required here?
I think that we have seen that as you have decentralized communities, the challenges of cross-cultural education around future directions is one of the biggest challenges in the ecosystem. I think what we saw with Prop 82 was the biggest locuses of distrust for the proposal came from non-English speaking communities. And I think it's a big lesson in, just there needs to be more effort that goes into outreach as we sort of continue to evolve decentralized governance beyond sort of English-centric communities. So it's just a lesson learned, and going to spend more time on that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point.
Sorry,
Yes,
Polkadot is often compared with Cosmos, and from my perspective, Cosmos is growing quicker. I mean, and keeping the momentum right now. So, what is the essence, and why Cosmos ecosystem is growing so fast right now? Yeah, question to
I don't know.
I mean, I wish.
I mean, I think the nature of the answer to the question is, I think we've had a more clearly articulated, hey, we can meet a lot of different use cases with what we built. And so, you can build something like Axelar, you can build something like DYDX v4, you can build something like Penumbra. There's just like a huge variety of different technical architectures that you can build with components that we've built, and the sort of general design principles that we've had. My experience, what I've been told is just that the Polkadot ecosystem is not as flexible for doing this kind of thing. And I think mostly when I look at the future of the multi-chain ecosystem, it's mostly when I look towards rollups and like that ecosystem, do I see the emerging alternatives or the potentially spiritual successors to the Cosmos ecosystem.
And I think one thing I would add, I think it all comes down to kind of a permissionless nature, right, of Cosmos. And even though like there is a lot of like debates within the ecosystem and things like that, I think I also found like a lot of people that are like a very strong community, right? And like people actually helping each other. I think, when we were starting Axelar, right, like I think a lot of people, including like Zaki and, a bunch of other folks kind of gave us feedback, right? Kind of, helped us understand the stack and so on and so forth. And like, frankly, in the early days when I was, looking for a platform, to work on for building Axelar, right? Like we looked at Polkadot, right? And like building there, I think it was just a bit behind, but and two, kind of the permissionless and flexibility, wasn't quite there, right? I'm sure, there are specific use cases where it makes sense to instantiate it, but for something that really, requires arbitrary changes, right, without asking for permission, but still have support in parallel, I think that was really nice to see within the Cosmos ecosystem.
Great to hear those. So, Sune, do you think there's anything particular on the roadmap of the Polkadot ecosystem which makes it more flexible, or do you know that something will give it a lot of momentum going forward, like Cosmos was able to build over the last 1 year?
Question to me?
Yes. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I was just saying that if there's something on the roadmap on Polkadot ecosystem which you think will give a more boost or more momentum to the ecosystem going forward, although we have already seen Polkadot being such a strong community for so many years. But what's the next one big thing that you would say is coming to the ecosystem?
I think the problem with the Polkadot is very technical and very hard to explain to a general people, right? And the Polkadot, do you have more than 40 parachain right now? But according to the data, the smart contract parachain are leading the ecosystem because Polkadot relay chain does not support smart contract. And deploying dApps on the top of a smart contract parachain is much easier than making a parachain from scratch. When you make a parachain, you have to use Substrate. This is the framework to make your own blockchain, and which is written in Rust. So it's hard to understand for a general developer. So I think a lot of the people deploy dApps on the top of a parachain instead of making a parachain from scratch. And the problem is we only have EVM right now. So 100% of the dApps on Polkadot is EVM based, written in Solidity. So in this sense, we are reproducing something which Ethereum can do and other ecosystem can do. This needs to be fixed. And we are going to support WebAssembly virtual machine in Q1. So we can support a lot of the languages, not only Rust, but also Go, maybe JavaScript, TypeScript, and so on. So supporting WebAssembly means unlocking Web3 for Web2 developer, because WebAssembly is mainly built by big tech giants like Microsoft and Google. So I I think Asta is leading WebAssembly implementation in the Polkadot ecosystem, and this is our mission to utilize Polkadot in Web2 space as well.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah, I think that will be, essential for driving the next phase of adoption for the Polkadot ecosystem and Web3 in general as well. We had a lot of fruitful discussion regarding the structure, the design, and the use cases. And I would like to focus now maybe on what does a multi-chain future, GMP connected multi-chain future look like to you? And I want to get thoughts of all of you, like how do you envision, like maybe in a few years down the line when all the complexities have been abstracted away from the users? So what kind of future do you foresee with a GMP or a interoperability connected multi-chain future in the world? Maybe you can start with Zaki.
I suspect that we will probably reach, like we're trying to get to a world where the user doesn't know what chain their application is built on, right? Like that's really what we want when we talk about the multi-chain world, because in the same way that like you don't know what cloud your website, like we're using this application that enables us to record this conversation, right? I have no idea what cloud it's on, like, or whether or not they have a physical data center. I mean, like all of that detail is completely extracted away from me. I think the future is the multi-chain. The future is there are going to be applications. There are going to be applications that people love. Some of those applications will be built on L1s that support many applications. Some of those applications will be built on application-specific L1s. I think the ultimate goal of all of this infrastructure is just like the internet, abstracted away what cloud, what server, what app server, everything, what programming language, everything your applications are used for, and you don't really care about any of that as a user. The future of Web3 is the same.
Got it. That's interesting to hear. Sergey, your thoughts on this?
Pretty similar, right? I mean, I think the reality is that if we don't get to that point, right, where as a user you can just interact with application and you always have to think about the chain, wallet, how to pay gas, we're gonna end up with the same complexities we have today, and we're not gonna grow the ecosystem. Period. Right? Like there's no way you can explain how to use 10 different blockchains to a user, right? That's not in the Web3 space today. Like it's a high barrier of education. It's a high barrier of entry. And so, I think the only way we can continue growing the ecosystem is that if we, start abstracting this away and building these layers right on top of it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's why kind of everybody here right on the panel is kind of working towards that vision and that goal. And I think it's kind of fundamental that we solve it if we want to keep growing the space. Otherwise, it's going to be a small problem set that we're solving for the people that are already in the space.
Got it. So that your views?
Yeah, I do have a same the vision. In the future,
Okay.
I don't know how many years it takes, but in the future, no one cares about which blockchain they're using, right? Just like internet.
Right.
When we use internet, I don't care about local area network. I don't care about wide area network, but we are communicating right now. That's enough. So in the future, when they interact with the blockchain, no one cares about Asta, no one cares about Cosmos in Polkadot. They care about utility. They care about usability. Just like application right now. And it might be too optimistic, but at least I think that the token transfer in the multiple protocol is going to be similar to bank transfer. There is Swift network, and someone care about Swift when they transfer the money from internationally, but it works, right? So yeah, I'm pretty much optimistic, and I think we are at the front of the multi-chain implementation right now. So future depends on us in some sense.
Right. Got it. So I'm observing a very common theme here that you all are telling me that that we need to abstract all the complexities away from the user. The user should not be aware at all what blockchain is he on. He's just concerned about the use case. But I have one question regarding this. Today as a user, let's take Atom for an example. That I got some Atom, I use that for governance, I use that for staking as well. I get some rewards, and then I could use that potentially in some DeFi by swapping, or there are like multiple use cases, right? But today I see a lot of overlap between users as well as the delegators, right, which are providing security to the layer one as well. If the users are completely unaware of what blockchain they are, like, do you see different set of people being a part of community who are delegating and providing security and holding the tokens, and the users being altogether different, or if the user, because for example, in Cosmos came out, they wanted like 2/3 of the tokens to be staked in order to provide security, and there's incentivization mechanism depending on the inflation schedule. So if everything is abstracted away from the users, like how do you get the users to buy the tokens of layer one, provide security to layer one, and participate in liquid staking or staking? I mean, it's an open-ended question. Anyone
Yeah, I mean,
can.
what I would say is, I expect that most people who use blockchains are going to be using the infrastructure and getting value from the infrastructure and not participating in governance. Like I don't view these as like these are like niche hobby activities. These are like prosumer activities to participate in governance, to like stake, to be part of securing the network. I don't imagine that there will be a future where, you know, 1 billion people are like staking atoms and sitting there and fighting in the governance forums. That sounds insane.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the consumer perspective, they don't care about which blockchain they are using. But from the infrastructure provider's perspective, they care. Like let's say Akamai, or maybe, you know, AT&T, NTT, and so on. That these big company actually paying the infrastructure cost, right? So in the future, these big company, or maybe, you know, infrastructure provider are using blockchain. I mean infrastructure, and they pay token. They participate in the governance. But from the consumer perspective, I think they don't know which blockchains they're using.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And thank you for, yes, Sergey, please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just to add to that. I mean, I think like the notion of a user account, right, is going to be kind of abstracted and rewritten in a way that, you know, I have an account, right? And like, if I just move my maybe like coins to like a saving accounts, right, then like it automatically becomes like staked on the back end, right? And, you know, maybe I don't know about it, but, you know, maybe like, you know, the validator of course can participate on behalf for governance and like things like that, right? And then like, what's your benefit for, you know, staking and things like that? It's not just you know, it's not just because you want to you know, earn or participate in governance, but it's a kind of an account, and you move like, you know, to a sweep or savings account, right, where maybe you get some more tokens, but, you know, somebody gets to participate in those things on your behalf. So I think, you know, with kind of liquid staking, you know, I think with a lot of like properties like interchain security and things like that, I think we're already starting to see this sort of decoupling of stake and consensus in some sense, right? And once you decouple those layers and they're becoming more fluid, I think then you get to rewrite what they're actually called and user activities are called, you know, on the front end. And so I expect we're going to see some of that where what you call a staking will not be called a staking. It will be, you know, move your coins, right, to like a savings account, and then Kepler or Cosmos Station, somebody will kind of vote on your behalf on the back end.
Got it. So yeah, again, the complexity will be abstracted away from the user. User will not be concerned about those. But in case a few users are like really interested, they still have the option to be able to do so, to be able to participate in the governance, right? Like even if there's an option of automation.
I certainly hope so.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I would also hope so, given that we have been talking for decentralization, more power to the community for so long. Yeah, I would definitely hope so. That's the future. And yeah, I mean, this has been a really great conversation. You guys have been awesome and have given like really interesting insights. And the key takeaway for me is that all the great people in the industry are working on making the overall industry a much better use, like moving towards a future where we are providing much better user experience to the users. There could be trade-offs in terms of how we think about security, how we think about trustlessness. There could be differences in the definition. There could be differences in adoption of one ecosystem, you know, gaining more momentum right now, or the other ecosystem gaining more momentum in the future. But at the end, it looks like, based on the comments and the thoughts of all three of you, that we are moving towards a future where we want the complexity abstracted away from the user and provide value to the end user. And given that there are so many layer ones, we do need general message passing and interoperability solutions to enable interesting use cases, which can abstract all complexity away from the user. And yeah, you know, I've been spending some time trying to understand these solutions, and based on your thoughts, I think there is going to be some shift in how I look at solutions. Like, as you mentioned, there's a lot of talk about just trustlessness, maybe not so focused on trustlessness, but also the other features. So I think this has been a tremendous learning experience for me, and I'm sure that our audience would have also learned a lot. And I would like to really thank you for your time today. and appreciate taking time from a busy schedule and helping us and everyone here learn about the work that you guys are doing. And once again, wishing you all the very best for all the projects. And I do hope, in future, we will see a lot more of what we discussed today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.